On my daughter's 5th birthday, Lori posted a photo on Facebook with the caption, "The little one was asking for daddy before bed." And the good father immediately dropped his work to come. The man lying in bed with her in the picture was none other than my husband, Trevor Knight. I looked at the message I had received just 10 minutes earlier. "Got work at the company tonight, you and Poppy don't have to wait for me." I liked the post and dialed the number of my divorce lawyer. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. It was already 2 in the morning when Trevor returned home. Sensing the harsh light, I immediately covered my daughter's eyes. Trevor leaned against the doorframe. "Darling, I'm back. Let's wake Poppy up and celebrate her birthday." In the past, I used to care deeply about these family rituals. Whether it was birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, or nursery school events, I always insisted Trevor try his best to attend. I didn't want Poppy to be like me, only able to see her father through video calls. But now, I smoothed out the duvet, my tone flat, no need. A flash of impatience crossed Trevor's face. "Grace, I went over there today just to put Steve to bed." "Don't misunderstand. It's because you're always so suspicious that I'm afraid to tell you the truth." I hadn't misunderstood, and I wouldn't be suspicious anymore. "If you don't have anything else, please go to your own room. Don't disturb Poppy's sleep, she has school tomorrow." Hearing my response, Trevor let out a cold laugh. "Suit yourself. But don't complain later that I've missed out on Poppy's growth." I turned to switch off the light, gently patting my daughter who had been slightly disturbed. Missing out didn't matter anymore. After all, Poppy's birthday wish this year was, "I don't want to see Dad anymore." The next morning, after finishing breakfast, Trevor didn't leave immediately as he used to. Instead, he sat there watching the morning news. Just before leaving, he suddenly picked up his keys and walked over, patting Poppy's head. "Dad will take you to school today." Though he was speaking to our daughter, his eyes were fixed on me. 2 years ago, when Poppy had just started nursery, Trevor would drop her off every day. But after Lori came along, he started leaving earlier and earlier, saying the company's morning meetings had been moved up, and he didn't have time to take the child. I had always believed him until 3 months ago when Poppy transferred schools. At the nursery gate, I saw the man who should have been at the office, bending down to lift a little boy from the back seat. It turned out he didn't lack time to take our daughter. He just had more important things to do. That night, we had a fierce argument. From the next day on, Poppy never again asked for her dad to take her. Although I had decided on divorce, Trevor was still Poppy's father after all. After a moment's consideration, I didn't voice my refusal. The man's lips curled slightly as he bent down to pick Poppy up. When he opened the car door, I froze. The back seat was filled with items. A Spider-Man water bottle, a wooden bow and arrow set, a women's shawl. Behind the seat hung a family photo. Noticing my gaze, Trevor's expression changed slightly. "Lori hung that up randomly, said it would make Steve happier. Don't make a fuss over such a small thing again." In the past, I would have smashed that family photo and tearfully questioned Trevor about what Poppy and I meant to him. But now, I just nodded, "It's a nice photo." Trevor looked at me strangely. "Aren't you angry?" Angry? Perhaps I should be, but for some reason, I felt nothing, even finding it somewhat amusing. Such a clumsy attempt, couldn't the usually shrewd Trevor see through it? It was simply that he didn't care. "Get in the car, Poppy will be late." Hearing my urging, Trevor pressed his thin lips together and opened the driver's door. Just as I was about to lift Poppy into the car, Trevor's phone rang. On the other end, a little boy was crying his heart out. "Daddy! Daddy! Where did you go? Have you abandoned Steve and Mummy?" Hanging up the phone, Trevor didn't even glance at us before hurriedly get into the car. "Steve is crying for me. Let the driver take you today." The black Maybach sped away, leaving us in the dust. Worried about Poppy, I crouched down to comfort her. "Daddy has something urgent today. Next time when he's free, we'll take you to school together, okay?" A maturity beyond her years showed on Poppy's face. "Daddy will never be free. All his time is for Steve Watts and his mom." In the early evening, Trevor called. Grace, I'll be home late tonight. Steve is ill. Okay, I replied, perhaps too quickly. Trevor's explanation caught in his throat. Thinking I was in a mood, his voice took on a note of displeasure. Grace, don't be difficult. He hung up without another word. 10 minutes later, several text messages came through. I'm sorry, Grace. Steve's been very clingy with his dad lately. But he's really something. How could he just abandon you and Poppy as soon as he got my call? I'll have a word with him. Don't be angry. The last message was accompanied by a laughing emoji. It was Lori. These messages were less an apology and more a declaration of war. I had no interest in fighting over a man with her. I deleted the messages and blocked her number. Not long after, Trevor called again. Grace, what on earth are you playing at? Lori apologized to you, and this is how you behave. I could faintly hear a woman and child crying in the background. I remained silent. After a long pause, Trevor's deep voice resonated. Grace, how could you become like this? I'm so disappointed in you. Lori had been the one to provoke me, but as soon as she cried, Trevor would lay all the blame at my feet, as if I were some kind of wicked villain. When I got home, I began packing my bags. As Trevor was calling, I was consulting with a solicitor. After the divorce, I would be entitled to at least 30% of Knight Group's shares. And given that our custody conditions were similar, our daughter would likely be placed with me, the mother. My last hesitation vanished. Clothes, handbags, jewelry, Poppy's favorite toys, all these needed to come with me. As I reached for the final box, I felt a moment of disorientation. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the dusty, wax-sealed container. It was filled to the brim with love letters from Trevor Knight, aged 17 to 22. I opened the one on top. It began, Dear Grace, aged 27. This is Trevor Knight, aged 17. This is the first love letter I've written to you. As agreed, we'll open this letter together in 10 years' time. We'll surely be married by then. Who knows, we might even have an adorable child. My phone rang. On the other end was Trevor Knight, aged 27. Grace! Did you know Lori left home with the child? If anything happens to them, I'll never forgive you. I happened to glance at the end of the letter. Yours forever, Trevor Knight, who will always love his Grace. A sharp pain pierced my heart, as if something had quietly shattered. I hung up the phone and threw the box into the fireplace. That night, Trevor didn't come home. I didn't frantically call him like before, crying and swearing I wouldn't trouble Lori again. Our daughter didn't ask about her dad either. She just silently took the photo of her and Trevor when I was packing our bags. Trevor and I fell into a cold war. Until a week later when Poppy's nursery needed a parent consent form signed with facial recognition. I called Trevor, only to find out I had been blocked. With no other choice, I had to take the consent form to his office. I hadn't been waiting long when I saw a familiar figure enter Trevor's office. The assistant pouring water looked a bit guilty. Mrs. Knight, Mr. Knight said Miss Green can enter his office anytime. This privilege for Lori was actually caused by me. Back then, I used to bring Trevor lunch often. We would chat for an hour while eating. Once, Lori came to see him but was stopped by the assistant. When Trevor finished lunch and walked me out, Lori and Steve were already shivering with cold lips. That was the first time Trevor snapped at me. He was furious, saying I was wasting his time by bringing lunch every day. The assistant who stopped Lori was also fired. Since then, everyone knew Lori was the apple of Trevor's eye. I never came to the office again after that. I smiled and nodded at the assistant, then walked straight to the office. Trevor was indeed in a meeting. He looked surprised to see me. Why are you here? Lori was sitting on the armrest of his chair, so close they were almost touching. Noticing my gaze, he hesitated. Grace, don't misunderstand. Lori happens to know a bit about this project, so. I nodded and handed him the tablet. Poppy needs a parent's signature for a school trip. You came just for this? What else? The man's aura darkened. Though I didn't know why. From my understanding of Trevor, he was in a very bad mood now. Lori scoffed. Why so complicated for a signature? Trevor, Miss Taylor just wants to make up with you. You've been staying at my place these days, you should go back to see Poppy. Trevor's brows smoothed out. He tossed the tablet on the coffee table and smirked. Grace, now you've learned to use the child as an excuse. Apologize to Lori, or I won't sign this. In the past, hearing such words would have angered me. I would have been furious at Trevor for not caring about his own daughter. And even more so for doing this for Lori. But now, I wasn't angry at anyone. I was just thinking that without a parent's signature, Poppy wouldn't be able to go on the school trip. She would surely be disappointed. I looked at Trevor and at Lori still sitting on his chair's armrest, then left the office without looking back. I'd just tell the teacher Poppy doesn't have a father. I had only walked a few steps when a cool male voice sounded. If Miss Taylor doesn't mind, perhaps I could sign in his stead. It was the man who had been in Trevor's office earlier. After all, I've witnessed quite a bit of your family affairs. Only then did I take a closer look at him. He wore an all-black suit exuding an air of abstinence, with sharp features that spoke of wealth and nobility. I handed the tablet directly to him. The authentication passed quickly, and the screen displayed two flamboyant words. Marvin Hill. The divorce papers were ready. I unilaterally ended this Cold War and asked Trevor to come home tonight. When I went to pick up Poppy from nursery, his Bentley was already waiting in the pickup area. The window rolled down, revealing Lori's smug face in the passenger seat. Miss Taylor, are you here to pick up your child too? This is an elite nursery. Why are you still wearing last year's coat? Aren't you afraid your child will be laughed at? I couldn't be bothered to respond and moved a bit further away. Lori turned to the man in the driver's seat, her face full of feigned hurt. Trevor, did I say something wrong again? Miss Taylor seems upset. Trevor, unusually, didn't answer. He stared at my thin coat without moving, his tone stiff. Grace, it's windy outside. Get in the car first. I moved even further away. I don't know when it started, but we've grown more and more distant. So distant that even saying something caring seemed forced for him. As we approached the entrance, two children in the queue started fighting. I frowned as I looked over, one of them was Poppy. I quickly ran over to separate them, only to realize the other child fighting was Steve Watts. He froze when he saw me, then immediately sat on the ground and started wailing. Wah! The lady hit me. It hurts so much. Trevor and Lori rushed over too. Lori scooped up her son, her face indignant. Grace, even if you don't like me, you shouldn't take it out on a child. It was just two kids squabbling. Was there any need to get so worked up? Trevor also looked at me disapprovingly, completely forgetting that Poppy was his own daughter. The teacher looked troubled. Poppy's mom, Steve's mom, the two children saw Mr. Knight, and both said he was their dad. They started arguing and then fighting. It was pickup time, and there were parents all around collecting their children. What's going on here? How can they be fighting over a dad? Could it be the wife and the mistress? That man looks rich. Maybe the kids are just being vain and lying and happen to run into each other. So materialistic at such a young age? I wonder how they're being raised at home. Steve was still crying loudly, clinging to Trevor's neck and repeatedly calling him dad. Poppy, on the other hand, just held my hand tightly, her eyes fixed on Trevor without blinking. The other children were curious too. Mister, whose dad are you really? Tell us. Whoever lied about their dad needs to apologize. Trevor opened his mouth. I'm Poppy's. Just then, Lori gently tugged at his sleeve, her eyes full of pleading. In an instant, I understood. Trevor had wavered, just like countless times before. As long as Lori spoke up, my daughter and I became his second choice. I gritted my teeth and said coldly, Trevor Knight, your answer now will affect Poppy for the rest of her life. Think carefully before you speak. The man's body stiffened slightly. His downcast eyes revealed no emotion as he spoke in a voice not loud, but audible to everyone present. I'm Steve's father. Little girl, you must have mistaken me for someone else. My heart tightened, as if struck by a sledgehammer. The pain almost bringing tears to my eyes. This was our daughter. The onlooking parents began to criticize Poppy. How can this little girl claim someone else's dad and hit their real son? Yeah, the truth is out and she still won't apologize. No manners at all. Jealous of their wealth, wanting to be a rich man's daughter, I suppose. That mother doesn't look like a good person either, all tarred up. Probably works in that industry. Deliberately teaching her daughter to call random men dad to hook a rich one. Trevor Knight, are you even human? Before I could finish, a sharp pain shot through my palm. Poppy bit her lip, her grip surprisingly strong, her eyes quickly dulling. Mom, let it go. She then turned woodenly to Trevor and bowed. Mister, I'm sorry. I mistook you for someone else. In the dessert shop, I held my daughter close, my heart aching. Poppy, he's your father. I don't expect you to love him, but I hope you won't grow up with hatred in your heart. The reply came in a flat, childish voice. Mom, I don't have a dad. He admitted it himself. He's Steve's dad. I felt the divorce papers in my bag and booked a flight to Portsmouth for tonight. On my phone was an apologetic message from Trevor, sent 10 minutes ago. Grace, I'm sorry. But Steve is from a single-parent family. In that situation, I had no choice but to lie. I'll explain everything to the teacher tomorrow. I won't let our daughter be wronged. This was the first time he had apologized to me about Lori, but it was too late. Neither Poppy nor I needed it anymore. One last trip back home to get our documents and some clothes. Then we could say goodbye to the city for good. I thought the house would be empty, but to my surprise, it wasn't. There were quite a few people there. In the living room, Steve was sitting on Poppy's special little sofa, playing with her favorite toy and watching TV. Trevor and Lori came out of the kitchen carrying dishes. They both froze when they saw Poppy and me. I frowned. We weren't even divorced yet, and he'd already brought her home. Trevor explained. About today's incident, Lori felt she should apologize to you. She was worried you might think she wasn't sincere. So she decided to cook some of your favorite dishes herself. I laughed coldly. I wouldn't dare eat anything the two of you cooked. Trevor, feeling guilty, didn't get angry for once. He said to Poppy and Steve, you two go play in the room for a bit. Dad and Mom need to talk. As soon as the children were out of sight, Lori stepped forward to apologize. Whether intentionally or not, she stood in line with Trevor. Miss Taylor, everything that happened today was my fault. I should have corrected Steve earlier. He's always thought Trevor was his real father. If it really bothers you, I'll take Steve and leave the city. We won't come back to bother you and Trevor again. As she spoke, she started crying. I looked at the woman in front of me, remembering the first time we met. Back then, her husband had just died. She came to us with her child, kneeling and crying pitifully. Now that I think about it, that might have been when Trevor started to have feelings for her. A woman with dark hair and red lips, kneeling gracefully before him, saying she needed someone to rely on for the rest of her life. Who wouldn't be moved? I smirked and took out the divorce papers. You don't need to leave. I will. Trevor, let's get divorced. Once we're divorced, you can be Lori's good husband and Steve's good father openly. Trevor looked at me, his expression dark and his eyes clouded. Grace, are you threatening me? I nodded. You could say that. The man laughed angrily. Grace, do you really think I won't do it? I've told you so many times, Steve's dad was my best friend. We made a promise when we were young that if anything happened to one of us, the other would take care of their family. Why are you being so petty? I remained calm. Yes, I'm petty. Mr. Knight is so magnanimous, don't bother with me. Just sign the papers quickly. Angered by my indifferent attitude, Trevor snatched the agreement, signed his name without even looking at it, and threw the papers at my feet. Grace, I've signed. What about you? Do you dare to go through with it? I picked up the agreement and was about to speak, when Steve came running out of the room, crying. Wah! Dad, Poppy hit me. The blood marks on his face were quite alarming. Trevor glared at me, his eyes seeming to want to devour me. Grace, look at how well you've raised your daughter. Poppy also came out of the room. Mom, I didn't hit him. He fell by himself. Trevor roared, Poppy Knight, now you're learning to lie. Apologize to Steve right now, do you hear me? Poppy glanced at him without answering. Seeing this, Steve cried even louder. Wah! Dad, it hurts so much. Trevor looked coldly at Poppy. Poppy, Dad doesn't like children who lie. You're disappointing Dad like this. Poppy wanted to say something, but I stopped her. Trevor, we have CCTV at home. To see who's lying, we just need to check the footage. When Lori heard this, her eyes showed a hint of panic. Uncharacteristically, she tried to smooth things over. Let it go. It's normal for kids to roughhouse a bit. There's no need to check any CCTV. Steve is the older one, it's no big deal if his little sister hits him a couple of times. What do you mean let it go? My daughter can't be falsely accused. We're watching this footage today, and that's final. Seeing my insistence, Trevor opened the door to the security room. The CCTV footage clearly showed that Steve had fallen by himself. Lori kept trying to cover for him. Trevor, Steve is just a child. He was probably too scared and felt he had to lie. Maybe Poppy has bullied him before, that's why he reacted like this. But Trevor ignored her, staring intently at the upper left corner of the monitor. In the footage, I was throwing a box into the fireplace. My movements swift and without hesitation. Trevor rushed over and grabbed my wrist, his eyes reddening. Grace, did you burn it? How could you burn it? I looked into Trevor's eyes, my tone calm. It was crawled over by insects, dirty. I didn't want it anymore, so I burned it. I'll take Poppy back to Portsmouth. I'll send you the divorce agreement afterwards. Seeing my expressionless face, Trevor visibly panicked. He finally realized that I truly wanted a divorce. Gracie, I didn't really want a divorce. I thought you were just threatening me, Lori was equally flustered, the fake smile on her face barely holding up. But she still managed to speak. Is Miss Taylor playing hard to get? Burning a box of meaningless stuff doesn't seem worth much. Get out! Trevor shouted. Lori fell to the ground, looking at Trevor in disbelief. Steve also burst into tears. Wah, Mummy lied. Mummy said if we got rid of them, Daddy would be all mine. I did everything Mummy said. Why aren't they leaving? Why aren't they leaving? In an instant, the man's face drained of all color. I couldn't be bothered to watch their tussle. I picked up my daughter and walked out. If we didn't leave now, we'd miss our flight. Portsmouth. Mom brought the driver to pick us up at the airport. I told you not to marry that poor boy. With a mother like his, how could he turn out any good? I covered Poppy's ears. Mom, the child is here. My mom sighed, still concerned for her daughter. It's good you're home. She then began to dote on her granddaughter lovingly. After a few days of rest, I took Poppy around to look for a new nursery school. We finally settled on a private school near our home. They had excellent security measures in place and organized many parent-child activities. As we were signing the paperwork to leave, the headmistress stopped us. Miss Taylor, Poppy's father said he's on his way. There's actually an activity today that you could participate in to get a feel for the school. Trevor Knight? I frowned, about to refuse, when a male voice interrupted me. This nursery's activities are quite interesting. Would you like to give it a try, Poppy? Standing at the door was Marvin Hill, whom I had met last month. Seeing my confusion, Marvin waved his hand in front of my face. What's the matter? Don't you recognize your child's father? After some explanation, I learned that Marvin's information had been entered during the school registration process. I felt apologetic, but he waved it off. It's no problem, I'm not busy anyway. I watched his phone ring 10 times in 3 minutes, but didn't call him out on it. Today's activity was a parent-child sports day. Poppy chose to participate in the 3-legged race and the relay. She ran around the field screaming with joy, shaking off the gloom of the past few weeks. I took the opportunity during a break to ask my mother to check on Marvin's identity. To my surprise, as soon as I sent his name and photo, my mother started laughing. "That's the Hill boy. He used to always steal your toys when you were little. Don't you remember?" It suddenly dawned on me why Marvin had seemed so familiar. I grew up in Portsmouth and only moved to London with my parents after primary school. After that, I rarely returned. Thinking back, I realized I had even seen Marvin a few years ago at my grandfather's funeral. After the event, I took Poppy home. As we were walking, Poppy's face suddenly fell. I followed her gaze and saw. In the sunset, a familiar figure was standing at our front door. It was Trevor. He followed me to Portsmouth, acting as if nothing had happened, trailing behind Poppy and me. Nursery, shopping center, dessert shop, his shadow was everywhere. Sometimes, he'd approach to say a few words. But seeing our impatient faces, he'd retreat with a dejected look. At night, he'd stand outside the Taylor family's mansion, dozing off against the gate when tired. This continued until half a month later, when Marvin returned from his business trip abroad and entered the Taylor residence right in front of him. Hearing the security guard say, "Miss Taylor has instructed that Mr. Hill can enter, but you can't," he finally lost control. With reddened eyes, he asked me, "Grace, we were once so in love. Have you really forgotten everything?" I froze on the spot. 17-year-old Trevor would wake up at 5 in the morning to wait for me before school, tirelessly explaining problems to me. 20-year-old Trevor would begin his award acceptance speech with my name and kneel to tie my shoelaces in the bustling campus. 22-year-old Trevor would fetch water daily to wash my feet during pregnancy, cry uncontrollably outside the delivery room, and spend entire nights cradling our daughter to sleep. But 27-year-old Trevor would let me take a taxi home alone late at night, shout at me because of another woman, and deny being Poppy's father in front of everyone. It's precisely because I haven't forgotten our past love that I can't forgive him. I told the security to drive him away. But 3 days later, he appeared at the gate again. The guards, knowing he was Poppy's father, didn't dare to use force against him. On my phone, Trevor kept sending messages. "Darling, I know I was wrong. Please, can we meet just once?" It started pouring outside, and I looked out the window. Under the dim streetlight, a man in a black suit stood in the rain, staring motionlessly at my room. Seeing my silhouette, a pleading smile appeared on his face. I went out with an umbrella. A litigated divorce would affect Taylor Group's stock price. Convincing Trevor to agree to a mutual consent divorce was the best solution. Seeing me approach, Trevor's eyes lit up. "Darling, you came. I knew you would. I've sent Lori away. No one will ever come between us again." He then pulled out a small rabbit plush from his coat. "This is what Poppy said she wanted before. I brought it for her. Could you give it to her?" The rain was heavy. The man didn't bother shielding himself but tightly protected the toy in his coat. "Poppy did say she wanted this, but that was a year ago. Back then, Trevor was busy helping Steve with his school admission, too occupied to care about her." I took the toy and threw it straight on the ground. Belated affection is cheaper than grass. Trevor's face paled. He forced a smile more painful than crying. "Darling, you're still angry, aren't you? Let me explain. There's really nothing between Lori and me. It was all her delusion, that's why she kept trying to come between us." I laughed mockingly. If Trevor hadn't given her hope, how could she have the audacity to provoke me again and again? Deliberately calling late at night to summon Trevor from home. Deliberately placing photos of her and Steve in the office. Making uninformed new employees think she was Mrs. Knight. Deliberately putting Lori and Steve's exclusive car stickers on the car door to claim ownership. Even 5-year-old Poppy could see something was wrong. Yet Trevor, the person involved, claimed ignorance. It was nothing but his belief that Poppy and I couldn't leave him, so he didn't care. I couldn't be bothered to hear his excuses. Turning to leave, I said, "Trevor Knight, I didn't come to forgive you. I came to make things clear. Stay away from Poppy and me. I don't want a litigated divorce, but if you insist on this, I don't mind seeing you in court. Trevor's eyes darkened, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the railing. Grace, I won't give up custody of Poppy, he said firmly. I'll hire the best lawyers. I paused mid-step as I was leaving, turning to look at him. Trevor, thinking I was wavering, looked at me with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He reached out, trying to take my hand. Darling, you don't want to leave Poppy either, do you? Trevor, you're forcing my hand. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Trevor Knight, you're just like your mother, aren't you? Ruthless to the core. In an instant, the man's face turned ashen. Grace, how could you say that? If I had any other choice, I wouldn't have resorted to this. Trevor's mother was his Achilles heel, and the main reason my parents objected to our marriage years ago. His mother had been an escort. When Trevor was born, she didn't even know who the father was. But having a child changed everything. Trevor's mom quit her old life and started doing odd jobs to make ends meet. They didn't have much money, but their life was warm and happy. When Trevor was 17, he had a chance to enter a competition. The entry fee and travel expenses added up to a considerable sum. Trevor was ready to give up, but the headmaster called home directly. That night, several people saw Trevor's mom enter a salon with a red light outside. When a portly man came out of the shop, Trevor, knife in hand, was ready to charge at him. I held him back with all my might. The teenager fell to his knees, crying out in anguish, just as he was doing now. The man cupped his face, crouching on the ground. Muffled sobs escaped through his fingers. Grace, please don't do this to me. He pleaded. I'm begging you. Trevor quickly agreed to the divorce and didn't fight for custody of Poppy. I received 80% of the Knight Group shares and, with Poppy's consent, changed her surname to Taylor. Occasionally, busybodies would tell me news about Lori. Trevor gave her some money to leave London and return to her hometown. But she refused, causing several scenes at the company, demanding 20% of Knight Group shares. Trevor finally saw her true colors, called the police, and even took back the money he had given her earlier. Lori left in disgrace. After enjoying a life of luxury, she was unwilling to do ordinary work. She began freeloading at dinner parties and chasing wealthy men. Within 6 months, she had contracted an illness. As for Steve, having lost his usefulness, he was sent back to his grandmother's house in the countryside. After the divorce, Trevor would come to Portsmouth once a month to visit Poppy, hoping to repair their father-daughter relationship. Unfortunately, each visit ended in disappointment. Poppy would only go out with him for half a day before insisting on returning home. And she never called him Dad. I asked her about it once. Poppy said that every time she wanted to say it, she would remember the incident at the nursery school, and the word Dad just wouldn't come out. After Poppy graduated from nursery school, Marvin proposed to me. But I didn't accept. Marriage is a cage, and I had just stopped being Mrs. Knight. I didn't want to immediately become Mrs. Hill. I arranged a year's leave of absence for Poppy and took her on a world tour. The snow-capped mountains of Tibet, the northern lights in Iceland, the sunset by the Seine. Listening to the wind, watching the clouds, gradually healing her wounded heart. I wanted her to know that her life had as many possibilities as the world is vast. There was no need to dwell on the past. Upon our return, I began to take over the Taylor family business. They all said my father had gone senile, handing the company over to a pampered heiress like me. That was until I exposed several senior executives for corruption at the shareholders' meeting, using this as grounds to remove a batch of managers. Then, drawing on my years of experience living in London, I launched new products that quickly captured the market. Only then did they realize I had come prepared. In the business world, I would occasionally run into people I knew from before. They said Trevor had become a complete workaholic, only showing emotional reactions when my name or Poppy's was mentioned. What a shame. You were once the model family that so many in our circle envied. And now, because of someone else's wife and child, you've ended up with a broken marriage and estranged from your daughter. I heard Poppy still won't call him Dad. I smiled without responding, but in my mind, I was thinking, the meeting's been delayed again. I won't be able to pick up Poppy. My parents were traveling abroad, so I had to call Marvin and ask for his help. He was quite familiar with the routine. After picking up Poppy, he came to the company. After dinner, he drove us home. As soon as we arrived, Poppy ran upstairs. She's growing up and likes her own space now. In the garden, only Marvin and I remained. He was wearing a gray suit today, which made him look even more elegant and distinguished. Half jokingly, he asked, "Grace, if I proposed now, would you still refuse?" I sighed. "Marvin, I don't plan on getting married again in the future. I can wait." The man's brow furrowed slightly. His profile hidden in shadow, his emotions unreadable. To be fair, Marvin is indeed an excellent marriage prospect. The sole heir to Hill Enterprises, handsome, cultured. And most importantly, good to both me and Poppy. My mother had once asked if I truly felt nothing for him. I didn't answer then, but now, looking at the man's bitter smile, I blinked and said, "However, considering you treated me to dinner, perhaps you could have a room of your own at the Taylor house." The June evening breeze in Portsmouth swept by. In the moonlight, Marvin's dim eyes suddenly lit up, his smile impossible to suppress. "Well then, thank you, Ms. Taylor."